Hey guys, MetalJesus here. Now today's video is going to be all about exclusive games that came out on the Xbox 360. Now I already did a video where I highlighted some games, and if you haven't seen that already, I'll link to it in the upper corner here. But like in that video, I want to mention that these are not necessarily hidden gems or good games, although some of them certainly are. I'm simply saying that if you want to play them on a gaming console, you're going to need an Xbox 360. Let's take a look. Alright guys, we're going to start off strong here with Project Sylpheed. This is a game published by Squaresoft, and this is an excellent game. This is a 3D space shooter that really reminds me of the Wing Commander series. You guys know that I love Wing Commander, played it back in the day, and this is right there. This is a ton of fun. I would also say that this kind of reminds me of a PlayStation 1 hidden gem called Omega Boost. Do you guys remember that game?
Alert leader to all pilots. We're fighting alongside the cadets today.
And very similar to Wing Commander, this is a very story-driven game. This is set in the 27th century when the human race is on the verge of a civil war, which basically means that there's a lot of excuses of going out into space and blowing stuff up. And as you can see here from the gameplay footage, it is a fairly typical arcade space shooter. You destroy specific enemy targets while trying to protect your allied ships. It also has secondary objectives like trying to not take any damage during the mission, if possible. Also, I love how you can paint your targeting system across a wide variety of enemies and then just launch all of your missiles at once. I mean, that never gets old. The game's going to take you about 5 to 8 hours to complete, which doesn't seem like a long time, but with this kind of game, I mean, it's crazy, it's chaotic. You're definitely going to get your money's worth. This is a ton of fun.
We can only pray the others make it back safely.
As I was talking to Reggie about making this video, he was like, dude, you've got to include Ninja Blade. And I was way ahead of him. I was like, oh yeah, dude, here it is. So Ninja Blade is from Software, which is a company that I cover quite a bit on this channel because they have made a ton of great games, and Ninja Blade is one of them. So basically think of this game as a mix of Ninja Gaiden and then a little bit of Devil May Cry. Although many people consider this game to be the spiritual successor to another Xbox game, an original Xbox game called Otogi 1 and 2. Basically, this is a hack and slash fighting game with platforming, hence the comparison to Devil May Cry. Now in the game you play as a badass ninja who is part of a team of ninjas who are trying to contain this outbreak in Tokyo, turning people into, I guess, crazy zombie creatures. I mean, honestly, it doesn't matter. This game doesn't have the most original story, and honestly, who cares? Because, you know, this is just a fast-paced, brutal game most of the time. Now, one of the knocks against this game is that they added God of War-like QuickTime events to it, which was a thing at this time. A lot of developers were doing that because it was the cool thing to do, and you just kind of have to put up with it. You know, it's one of those things where you're in a boss battle and the buttons come up on the screen and you have to tap them at the right time. It's annoying. I'm glad that this trend has faded off because I just want to see the cutscene. I just want to see my character be badass, and you have to do these stupid QuickTime events. But again, don't let that dissuade you. This is still a really cool game. Next up is the Serious Sam Collection. This is 4 legendary games plus the DLC. Now, I believe originally all of these were downloadable only, so they were in the Xbox 360 arcade. But again, here you have them all on the disc, which, as you guys know, I absolutely love that. Now, if you're not familiar with the Serious Sam franchise, it's a lot of fun and certainly has a following on the PC. Basically, these games are first-person shooters, as you can see here, and they play very much like classic Doom, meaning that they're very quick-paced, run and gun first, ask questions later. Now, it looks like that some of these games have gotten a graphical upgrade, especially since the original PC versions, which is great.
Yourself.
And oh man, I completely forgot about these guys who run towards you with bombs, and they're screaming. It's so hilarious, but they freak me out. A couple other notable things about this collection I want to talk about. For instance, here is the third game, and I hadn't played this game before getting this collection, and I was kind of surprised at how modern the third game feels. The engine's definitely got more going on here. It's graphically a much better looking game, yet it still has most of that classic feel. And then a fun surprise is the Serious Sam Double D Extra Extra Large game that is included on here. Now, as you can see, this is a side-scroller shooter that's really easy to pick up, but again, gets tough very quick. Now, I have to admit it doesn't have the best graphics. I mean, it kind of looks like a cheap mobile game, but the twin-stick shooting is fun, and it's just as silly and over-the-top as the other games in the series. So, you can get the individual games on other gaming platforms, but this is the only Serious Sam physical collection that I'm aware of. Next up is a game I consider very much to be a hidden gem on the 360, and that is Culdcept Saga. So, this is described as sort of Magic the Gathering meets Monopoly, meaning that it's part card game and part board game. What you do in this game is roll dice and then move a character around a game board, trying to claim spaces for your own. Very similar to Monopoly, right? And then once you're on that space, you can summon creatures, which are in the form of cards in your inventory, to then defend that space. Then you take turns, so you and your opponent move around the board, and then if you land on a space that's not your own, you have two choices. You can either challenge the monster that is guarding that space, or you can pay a toll. If you challenge the monster, then you choose a card to go up against it, and they will battle based on their statistics. If you win, then you get control of the space. There's also special cards that will heal your monsters, boost your stats, even attack your opponent from afar. All told, there are about 500 cards in the game to collect, so there's definitely a lot of strategy involved. I was pleasantly surprised by this game, and I had a lot of fun with it. So if you're looking for something a little different to play, definitely check it out. Oh yes, Condemned Criminal Origins. So, this is a first-person survival horror game, and what's cool about it is that instead of focusing just on shooting, this game instead focuses on melee combat and also puzzle solving. It's funny because as I was capturing this footage, it kind of reminded me of the Chronicles of Riddick, Escape from Butcher Bay. Do you remember that game? They have kind of similar vibes. Another thing about this game is that I remember the first time I played it, I thought this game was pretty scary because most of the time you're spent exploring these dilapidated buildings and you only really have a flashlight to break the darkness. Also, there's something very unsettling about spending most of the game very up close to these crazy enemies. I mean, it's so much easier when you have a gun, but when you're just toe-to-toe with these guys, it gets tough. It gets very intense. I do want to mention that if you happen to have an Xbox One, Microsoft added this game to the compatibility list. And if you like these kind of games, you're definitely going to want to check out the sequel, Condemned to Bloodshot. That game came out on the 360 as well as the PlayStation 3. Next up, we have Tales of Vesperia. So, this is the 10th game in a very popular Japanese RPG series. It just happened to turn out to be a very well-received and reviewed role-playing game. This is definitely a fan favorite. When this game was announced for the Xbox 360, a lot of JRPG fans were surprised because this was going to be a big release with full voice acting. But where was the PlayStation 3 version?
There's no hope of escape. We've got you surrounded.
Does it look like I'm trying to escape? See, it's stuff like that that keeps you guys from getting promoted.
You did not just say that.
I say, you take that back.
Enough beating around the bush, I guess.
You see, a lot of JRPG fans are used to playing these kind of games on a PlayStation console, so this was kind of a big deal. What's interesting is that eventually a PlayStation port was announced for North America, and that it was going to come expanded with English voice acting just like the Xbox 360 version, even more content. I mean, people were stoked. But sadly, that North American PlayStation 3 version never happened. Fans were bummed. So this is the definitive version for English audiences, and it's exclusive to the Xbox 360. And for you collectors out there that love the Tales series and your physical versions, you need to know that there is a premium edition that is very, very collectible. It goes for a lot of money online. That's because it comes with a 10th anniversary music CD, as well as an art book and also collectible steel case.
Yeah!
Hey! Are you trying to kill me?
Well, you don't belong in the castle, right?
No, and I'll take it as a compliment that you can tell that by looking at me.
Ridge Racer 6. So in many ways, this feels like a traditional Ridge Racer game. The goal of this game is to come in first after 3 laps. You spend that time drifting and boosting to beat the other drivers. I've always felt that the Ridge Racer series feels unlike any other arcade racing game out there, which is great. But the series at this point was starting to feel a little dated. That said, I thought the graphics at the time that this came out were pretty great. I mean, this game looks pretty awesome on the 360. There's also a lot of content here with 30 tracks to race on, as well as 130 cars to unlock. Now, it's worth noting that Ridge Racer 7 on the PlayStation 3 is considered a director's cut of this game, and they also mixed in parts of the PSP version as well. But if you want the full experience, well, you have to get it here on the Xbox 360. Next up is Dead or Alive 4, another game that is exclusive to the Xbox 360, and to be quite honest, I'm kind of surprised because it seems like these fighting games come out on every system. So what do you get? Well, there are 22 playable characters, and as you can see, pretty awesome graphics. I mean, they look even great today. There's also a couple gameplay tweaks, including shorter times for counter moves, making them a little bit more difficult to pull off. As a matter of fact, full disclosure here, I'm capturing this footage, and I was struggling. I was dying big time. I could not win matches to save my life. I mean, I won a few of them, but it was probably by luck. Now, I don't play a lot of fighting games. I mean, that's really Reggie's thing, but I was surprised. This is a tough fighting game. Now, I do want to mention that this game has a pretty cool unlockable character in the form of a Halo Spartan. So, if you get that far enough in the game, yes, you can play as Nicole, the Halo Spartan. Pretty cool. Next up is a tactical role-playing game called Spectral Force 3. This is the first game in a series to be released in North America, and a lot of people compare this series to Suikoden or perhaps Fire Emblem. And like I mentioned, this is a tactical role-playing game, which means that you control a squad of people on a 3D plane here, and then everything is turn-based, so you can really take your time to figure out what strategy you want to use. It has over 40 characters you can recruit to your side, each having their own unique skills and abilities. This is also a pretty long game. It's going to take you anywhere from 40 to maybe 60 hours to beat. You know, I wonder how many people know about this game, because when it was released, it was generally criticized for its fairly dated graphics. But, you know, if you can look past that, there's quite a bit of depth here and replayability. It's a solid tactical RPG. Oh boy, remember how I said not every game is a hidden gem or even fun? Yeah, sadly Bullet Witch kind of falls into that category, but it is exclusive to the Xbox 360, so we need to talk about it. This game is obviously, as you can see here, a third-person shooter set in a post-apocalyptic future where you play as a witch looking to hunt down a powerful demon. I was surprised to learn that this is developed by the same team that did Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex on the PlayStation 2. Not a great game either, but certainly better than this one. So, what's wrong with the game? Well, I guess to start, it's just poorly designed, and on top of that, it has a terrible camera control. For instance, the graphics stutter, the frame rate drops for no apparent reason, and it does it all the time. Plus, the enemy AI, they're just brain dead. And to make matters worse, I mean, the shooting just gets boring real quick. But I do like the character, and she's kind of badass. I mean, she looks cool, I guess. I don't know, this just has bad budget title written all over it. Next up is 99 Nights, a game that is much better than Bullet Witch. As you can see by the footage here, this is a fantasy hack and slash game, and basically you play as a badass that just hacks down waves and waves of enemies. And it's of no surprise that this game is often compared to the Dynasty Warriors franchise, where hundreds of enemies are on the screen at one time. As a matter of fact, at the time that this game was released, well, gamers were kind of amazed and blown away that there are times in this game where literally thousands of enemies are on the screen at once. It felt very next gen. And with so many enemies on the screen at once, well, that leads to huge combos. So when you're playing through this game, you're going to see combos as high as 3,000, 4,000, even 5,000. It's pretty cool to see it build up that high. And then eventually you're going to turn the tide of the battle, and that's where the enemy commander shows up, and also where the real challenge begins, because they are tough. I have to be honest though, I don't typically play these kind of games very much. I actually really enjoy them. They can be very fun to just kind of zone out and hack and slash your way through these levels. It's actually pretty cool. However, I find that the gameplay kind of hurts my wrist. I don't know, gives me carpal tunnel or something. So I like them, but I can't play them for very long. Here we have Fuzion Frenzy 2. This is a multiplayer party game, and it's a sequel to the original that was on the, well, original Xbox. This game was developed by Hudson Soft, which might sound familiar because, well, they've made a bunch of console games, including Bomberman, as well as a bunch of the Mario Party games, Fact Xanadu, and literally hundreds more. In this game, you're taking part on a futuristic game show, but honestly, that doesn't really matter. Basically, there are a bunch of themed planets to choose from, and on each of those are mini or party games that you can compete in. The first Fuzion Frenzy game was actually pretty fun and well received, and I like this game, but honestly, it's not as good as the original. But you guys know that sometimes how much fun you have in a party game really depends on what friends you have over sitting on the couch. So there is some fun to be had here. All right, well, that is 12 games that are exclusive to the Xbox 360. Definitely some surprises in there. Also, a lot of Japanese games, which is pretty cool. Another thing I want to mention that I alluded to with some of these is that Microsoft continues to add backwards compatibility for a lot of these games on their Xbox One. I own an Xbox One X, and that is definitely one of my favorite features of that console. All right, guys, thanks for watching.